This here is a more of an in-depth look at the Terra deck. It's got a lot of summons in it, or Terra Magical Adept, so it's got a lot of summons in it. And it's got a sub-theme with clerics and life gain. So we've got Terra Magical Adept. When Terra enters, mill 5 cards. Put up to 1 enchantment card milled this way into your hand. She's got Trance, so you could pay 4 and a red and a green. Exile Terra, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. So when you do transform Terra, you become Esper Terra. It's got 4 chapters. Create a token that's a copy of target non-legendary enchantment you control. It gains haste. If it's a Saga, you could put up to 3 lore counters on it. Sacrifice it at the beginning of your next end step. When you hit the 4th chapter, you can add 2 white, 2 blue, 2 black, 2 green, and 2 red. Then you exile Terra, bring her back face up onto the battlefield. What's nice about all this extra mana is if we have haste out, we can immediately transform Esper Terra back again. So we've got a lot of summons in here. Summon Leviathan. Return each creature that isn't a Kraken, Leviathan, Merfolk, Octopus, or Serpent to its owner's hand. Don't really like that one in here, but it's a summon. Until end of turn, whenever a Kraken, Leviathan, Merfolk, Octopus, or Serpent attacks, draw a card. Summon Ixion. Exile target creature an opponent controls until the Saga leaves the battlefield, so we have some removal. And then we have a way to, for the next 2 chapters, put a +1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures you control and gain 2 life. Life gain is somewhat of the sub-theme in here as well. And counters. Summon Bahamut. Destroy up to target permanent, non-land permanent. So you do that for 2 chapters. Then the next chapter you draw 2 cards. And then the last chapter, this creature deals damage equal to the total mana value of other permanents you control to each opponent. So the first chapters though, we've got removal. Primal Garuda. This creature deals 4 damage to target tap creature an opponent controls, so we've got some removal again. The next 2 chapters, another target creature you control gets +1/+0 against flying, so we got a bit of a buff. Kujata. This creature deals 3 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures, so potentially some removal. Then up to 3 target creatures can't block this turn. A way to get your damage through. And then discard a card. Then draw 2 cards. And when you discard a card this way, this creature deals damage equal to that card's mana value to each opponent. Valfor, or Valfor. Each opponent with the greatest mana value, or each opponent chooses a creature with the greatest mana value among creatures they control. Return those creatures to their owner's hands. So again, removal. Tap up to 1 target creature and put a stun counter on it. We could do that for the next 3 chapters. We've got Primal Odin. Some removal again. Destroy target creature an opponent controls. For its 2nd chapter, this creature gains, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. And then we can draw 2 cards, and each player loses 2 life. It's going to be hard to get that 2nd one off to do damage. But we've got Jill, Shiva's dominant. When Jill enters, return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If you pay 3 and 2 blue, you can exile Jill, and then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. So when we transform Jill, she becomes a Saga with Mesmerize. first two say target creature can't be blocked this turn. So that will go well with the second chapter, where when this creature when this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. You gotta kind of think ahead for that one. And for the third chapter, tap all lands your opponent's control, exile Shiva, then she returns to the battlefield face up, and we get to return one other target non-land permanent to its owner's hand again. We've also got Clive, Ifrit's dominant. When he enters, you can discard your hand, then draw cards equal to your devotion to red. If you pay 4 and 2 red, you exile Clive. He comes back transformed. So, potential removal, Ifrit fights up to one other target creature. For the next 2 chapters, you get to add 4 red. And then you will be transforming him back with the option to discard your hand and draw cards. We got Brynhildr. Exile top card of your library. During any turn, you put a lower counter on this saga. You may play that card. So the next 2 chapters is when you next cast a creature spell this turn, it gains haste till end of turn. Summon Esper Velagarmanda. Exile an instant or sorcery card from each graveyard. And for the next 3 chapters, you can add a red for each lore counter on this saga, and you may cast an instant or sorcery card exiled with the saga, and mana of any type can be spent to cast it. Fenrir. Fenrir lets you ramp a bit, looking for a basic land, putting it onto the battlefield tapped. For the next chapter, when you next cast a creature spell, you get a +1 counter on it. And for the third chapter, you draw a card if you control a creature with the greatest power, or tied for the greatest power. We've got Summon Titan. You mill 5 cards. Return all land cards from the graveyard to the battlefield tap, so you've got some potential ramp there. Until end of turn, another target creature you control gains trample and +X/+X, where X is the number of lands you control. We've got the Magus Sisters. You choose it at random for the 3 chapters, so you could potentially get 3 +1 counters on target creature, or a shield counter on target creature, and you gain 3 life. Blech. And you can also have potential removal, where this creature fights up to 1 target creature an opponent controls. Chocomog. For all 4 chapters, other creatures you control get +1/+0, so a little buff. Summon Knights of Round. For the first 4 chapters, you create 3 2/2 White Knight creature tokens. And for the last chapter, other creatures you control get +2/+2 till end of turn, and put an indestructible counter on each of them. Brutal. Summon Good King Mog, the 12th. Create 2 1/2 White Mogul creature tokens with lifelink. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell this turn, create a token that's a copy of a non-saga token you control. And then you put 2 +1 counters on each other Moogle you control. We've got GF Ifrit. You may discard a card. If you do, draw a card for the first 2 chapters. For the last 2, you get to add a red. Shiva. For the first 2 chapters, tap target creature an opponent controls, put a stun counter on it. In a way, that's somewhat removal. And for the third chapter, draw a card for each tapped creature your opponents control. And the last saga in our deck is Anima. Not Enema, Anima. For the first 3 chapters, you draw a card and you lose a life. For the last chapter, each opponent sacrifices a creature of their choice and loses 3 life. So again, we've got some removal. And that's a lot of sagas we have in there. So, what other things do we have in there that kind of help these sagas? Y'shtola Rule. Bit pricey. At the beginning of your end step, exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it's the first end step of the turn, there is an additional end step. So you could potentially do that twice, thereby resetting your sagas and keeping them on the field longer. We've got Clash of the Icons. Target creature you control fights target creature an opponent controls, so some removal. Put a lore counter, or remove a lore counter from target saga you control, or put a lore counter on target saga you control. So you could speed up the process of a saga or slow it down. Garnet, Princess of Alexandria. She has lifelink. Whenever Garnet attacks, you may remove a lore counter from each of any number of sagas you control. Put a +1/+1 counter on Garnet for each lore counter removed this way. So Garnet can keep your sagas around longer and make herself grow real big, real fast. Riku, Resourceful Guardian. Whenever you put one or more counters on a creature, until end of turn, that creature can't be blocked by creatures your opponents control. So you can make your sagas unblockable, if I'm doing that correctly. Chocobo Knights. Whenever you attack, creatures you control with counters on them gain double strike till end of turn. So all your sagas will have double strike. Red 13, Proud Warrior. It's got Vigilance and Trample, but other modified creatures you control have Vigilance and Trample. So all those sagas will have Vigilance and Trample. Sephiroth, Fallen Hero. Whenever Sephiroth attacks, you may put a cell counter on target creature. Until end of turn, each modified creature you control has base power and toughness 7/5. So all your sagas will be 7/5s if you attack with Sephiroth. Sephiroth has Reunion, and you can pay 3, sacrifice a modified creature, return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. We've got Bartz or Winota. Whenever a non-human creature you control attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may put a human creature card from among them onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Virtually all your sagas are non-human creatures, so the human creatures you do have in here, such as Sephiroth and Yuna, Terra, well, other Terra, you could potentially get for free. And we've also got Random Encounter. I put Random Encounter in here because I think Random Encounter is fun. It's also got a lot of creatures in this deck, so there's a good chance, although it still is a chance, there's a good chance that when you mill your 4 cards, you'll potentially get up to 4 creatures that you could put onto the battlefield with haste. And then at the beginning of the next end step, you return those creatures to your hand. You bring out 4 sagas, or yeah, that could potentially be fun. So I was saying there was a bit of a life game sub-theme in here. We've got Aerith Gainsborough with lifelink. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Aerith Gainsborough. When Aerith dies, put X +1/+1 counters on each legendary creature you control, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Aerith. That most likely won't be your sagas, but it'll be all the supporting creatures around it. We've got Esper Origins, Survey 2, gain 2 life. If you flashback it, you get to transform it. We've got ourselves another Saga. Reveal the top card of your library. If it's a permanent card, put it into your hand. Second chapter, you get 2 green mana. Third chapter, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample till end of turn. You've got Joshua. When Joshua enters, discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards. If you pay 3 and a red and a white, you get to exile him and bring him back. The first 2 chapters say Phoenix deals 2 damage to each opponent. Phoenix has lifelink, so you will also be gaining 2 life. And the third chapter is return any number of target creature cards with total mana value 6 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then you transform Phoenix back into Joshua. You've got the Darkness Crystal. I put all the crystals in this deck because I thought it would be fun to have all 5 crystals. You get a discount for each one for the color it is, and they each do their own thing. So this one, black spells cost 1 less to cast. If a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, instead exile it and you gain 2 life. And if you pay 4 and 2 black and tap it, put target creature card exiled with the Darkness Crystal onto the battlefield tapped under your control with 2 additional +1/+1 counters. We got Instant Ramen. When you bring it in, you get to draw a card. If you pay 2 and tap, you could sacrifice it and gain 3 life. I just thought it was funny, and it gives you that little bit of life gain. The Wind Crystal. White spells cost 1 less to cast. If you would gain life, you would gain twice that much life instead. If you pay 4 and 2 white and tap it, creatures you control gain flying and lifelink till end of turn. I wouldn't underestimate that. Flying gives you some evasion. Lifelink gives you some longevity. And it works with Aerith and some other people like Hope Entham. Hope has lifelink, but at the beginning of your end step, each opponent mills X cards, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. It's a little niche, but with it, we've got the Water Crystal. Blue spells cost 1 less to cast, but if an opponent would mill 1 or more cards, they mill that many cards +4. If we pay 4 and 2 blue and tap it, each opponent mills cards equal to the number of cards in your hand. So we have some ways to bring back cards from the grave, including your sagas. Phoenix Down. Pay 1 and white, exile this artifact. Return target creature card with mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Or you can use it to exile a pesky skeleton, spirit, or zombie. Faith and Grief, the adventure side of Ishgard. Return up to 2 target artifact and or enchantment cards from your grave to your hand. Rydia, Summoner of Mist. She has a landfall where whenever a land you control enters, you can discard a card. If you do, draw a card. But I mostly use her for the summon. Pay X, tap her. Return target Saga card with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Gains haste until end of turn. Yuna, Hope of Spira. During your turn, Yuna and enchantment creatures you control have trample, lifelink, and ward 2. So protecting, lifelink, and trample to all your sagas. At the beginning of your end step, return up to 1 target enchantment card from your grave to the battlefield with finality counter on it. Aerith, Last Ancient, lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained life this turn, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. If you gain 7 or more life, return that card to the battlefield instead. We've got Terra, Herald of Hope. At the beginning of combat on your turn, mill 2 cards. Terra gains flying till end of turn. Whenever Terra deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2. When you do, return target creature card with power 3 or less from your grave to the battlefield tapped. And we have Celeste, Rune Knight. When she enters, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards +1. So she's good for that. She doesn't bring back anything, but whenever 1 or more other creatures you control enter, if 1 or more of them entered from a graveyard or was cast from a graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So a few other miscellaneous things in here is Yuna's Whistle. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. When you reveal a creature card this way, put X +1 counters on target creature you control, where it's the mana value of the card. Moog, Moogle Warrior. Lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, each player may discard a card. Each player who discarded a card this way draws a card. If a creature card was discarded this way, you may create a 1/2 white Moogle creature token with lifelink. If a non-creature card was discarded, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on each Moogle you control. We've got Yuna, Grand Summoner. You add 1 mana of any color when you tap her, and the next, when you next cast a creature spell this turn, that creature enters with 2 additional +1 counters on it. Whenever another permanent you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, if it had 1 or more counters on it, you may put that number of +1 counters on target creature. So she's good support, especially if you have your summons go to the grave. Rosa, Resolute White Mage. She's got reach, but at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains lifelink. We've got Minwu, the White Mage. Vigilance lifelink. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on each cleric you control. And we've got Dion, Bahamut's Dominance. So other knights you control have flying. When Dion enters, create a 2/2 white knight creature token. If you pay 4 and 2 white, you can flip him. And then you put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. That creature gains flying till end of turn. And you have some removal, destroy target permanent. And then it will be transforming back into Dion. We also have the Earth Crystal. Green spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. If 1 or more +1 counters would be put on a creature you control, twice that many +1 counters are put on that creature instead. And if you pay 4 and 2 green and tap it, you could distribute 2 +1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures you control. So I put Zidane, the Tauntless Thief, in here. When he enters, gain control of target creature and opponent controls till end of turn. Untap it. It gains lifelink and haste till end of turn. Whenever an opponent gains control of a permanent from you, you get to create a treasure token. It goes good with Stiltskin. Stiltskin you could pay 2 and tap it. Target creature or target opponent gains control of another target permanent you control. If they do, you get to draw a card. With Zidane, you get to create a treasure as well. Minwu. Whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more of those creatures are attacking you and or planeswalkers you control, you get to draw a card. Whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, you get to draw a card. Lifestream Blessing, draw X cards. So you're drawing cards. But if this spell was cast from exile, you gain twice X life. So you got that life gain thing again. Kane, Treacherous Dragoon. During your turn, gain his flying, so he's got some evasion. It's a fun card. When he deals combat damage to a player, if that player gains control of gain, or that player gains control of gain. If they do, you draw that many cards, create that many tapped treasure tokens, and lose that much life. With the life gain, it shouldn't be a problem for you. And they do get to use it to create treasure, but if they do, why not have Avalanche of Sector 7? Avalanche of Sector 7's power is equal to the number of artifacts your opponents control. And whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact they control, Avalanche of Sector 7 deals 1 damage to that player. And we've also got the Fire Crystal in here. Red spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. The more important part is creatures you control have haste. And if you pay 4 and 2 red and tap it, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. But then you have to sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. And lastly, we have Fate of the Suncrist. It could cost 2 less to cast, but you get to destroy target non-land permanent. So you got more removal other than the removal you have on your sagas. Memories of Nimbleheim. Destroy target non-land permanent. Its controller creates a 1/1 white human creature token. A Moogle's Valor, some protection, and you get to create more Moogles. For each creature you control, create a 1/2 white Moogle creature token with lifelink. Those creatures you control gain indestructible till end of turn. You've got Torgal, Fine Hound. Whenever you cast your first human creature spell, you get to put an additional +1 counter on it. So that's more for your support creatures for your sagas. But you get to tap him for 1 mana of any color. Bugenhagen. Reach. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a creature with power 7 or greater, draw a card. But you get to tap him to add a mana of any color. A Realm Reborn. It is a 5-color deck, so other permanents you control have tap to add 1 mana of any color. It's a nice ramp because it's all your other permanents. And we've got Triple Triad, because Triple Triad is a fun little mini game. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player exiles the top card of their library. Until end of turn, you may play the card you own exiled this way, and each other card exiled this way with a lesser mana value, without paying their mana costs. I just think it's a fun little mini game, so I like casting that card. And that was the summon deck with Terra Magical Adept. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.